so soured on everything about what it is. Is this really 30 seconds? This is crazy. Okay. Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for continuing to support my channel. Hey everybody, this is Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, and today I am going to be going over a ranking of every single one of the 117 books that I read in 2022, starting from 117 and finishing at number 1, but with the limitation that I'm only allowed to talk for 30 seconds per book. Now, I am kind of known for talking rather lengthy about books that I love, so this is going to get increasingly harder for me to confine my comments to 30 seconds, but I'm going to stop the moment I hit the mark, and I have a little timer that I will keep resetting, so let's see how this goes. So we're going to start with number 1, and number 1 is The Rose by P.D. Alleva. This was a 1-star for me, and this is the first time that I accepted a book from an author that randomly sent me a book. I was new to doing BookTube. I didn't even have a BookTube yet, I think. I just accepted this book and I was like, yeah, free book, I'll read it. And it was like this weird vampire modern day book that was just really bad writing. And I hate to trash an author that, oh wow, that is so fast. Okay, let's move on to 116. This is the 5th season, part of The Broken Earth by N.K. Jemisin. Another 1-star for me. I hated everything about this book. I hated the second-person perspective that a lot of this book had. I thought the twist in it was horrific. I hated the tone of the book. I thought the world was okay, but I didn't really get any more into that as the story went along. It was just very strange that the one good part about the book didn't get a lot more depth than that first book. The character reactions to everything were weak. It's just the whole tone of the book was just off. Okay. That's so fast. Number 115 is The Burning God from the Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, another 1-star. I kind of liked the first book in the Poppy War. I didn't really like the second book. This third one I thought was so bad. I hated the main character at this point. Everything about the main character I thought was horrific, and it made me dislike so much about the story because of how much I hated this character. I also didn't like that I already knew the story because it's just the Chinese Civil War and the events that followed after that. So I knew everything that would happen. And the only fun parts, the parts about the gods, oh my god, this is crazy. All right. 114, Gideon the Ninth, part of the Locked Tomb by Tamsyn Muir. Another one that I just hated. 1-star. Again, I hated the MC. I thought it was like this angsty teenager. The whole tagline about like lesbian necromancers in space didn't really have any of that. It was just a weird murder mystery story essentially. And yeah, everything about it was just weak, especially that main character. When I hate the main character of a book, I'm so soured on everything about what it is. Is this really 30 seconds? This is crazy. Okay. Number 113, 3 Parts Dead, part of the Craft sequence by Max Gladstone. I put out a poll on YouTube that said which book should I read, and this one won. It was like a raffle actually, and it started off good. I kind of liked the world a little bit, but it was such an info dump after info dump that just took me so much out of the story. I don't like info dumps. I want you to suck me in and make me confused. I love to be confused in fantasy books. Slowly drip it in and let me get it over time. I did better that time. All right, number 112. This is Tigana by Guy Gavriel K, another 1-star. I didn't even finish the book. I got mostly through it. I really, really was excited to read Guy Gavriel K, and I almost feel like too dumb for him because his prose is obviously amazing. I loved it. The story, however, I did not like, and I worry that, on the scale of things, where you have like Brandon Sanderson with bad prose but amazing stories, I feel like he's the opposite. And I'd much rather have a Brandon Sanderson than this, where the story is just so weak, and the prose is so beautiful. If you're gonna have beautiful prose, okay. Number 111, The Cracked Pot Trail. This is The Tales of Botchland and Corbel Broach by Stephen Erikson. This is a short story. There's a collection of short stories, and I loved most of them. 2 of them I didn't like. I hated this one. Didn't even finish it. I hear the ending has a nice little twist that I kind of figured. But yeah, man, it was just like all these like short stories and people telling stories to each other, and I felt like it just went over my head and like way too smart for me, which is kind of classic for Steven Erikson, even though I love the guy. I just couldn't follow along. Number 110 is Half the World. This is part of the Shattered Sea by Joe Abercrombie. I gave this a 1 out of 5. Couldn't finish it. I read the first book. I didn't realize it was a YA story when I got into it, and then I started reading it. I was like, what is this? When's it going to become Joe Abercrombie? Never did. The ending was saved on the first book, which I'll talk about later. The second book I was reading, it was like entirely new characters. I just couldn't get into it. And then I heard from a lot of people that it gets worse. So I just couldn't keep going, had to duck out when I did. Kind of glad that I did. Felt a lot of relief when I finally gave up that book. Number 109 is The Lost Metal. This is Mistborn Era 2 by Brandon Sanderson. Oh man, I hated this book. I didn't like Era 2 in general, and but this was the worst of the bunch. It was like the Wayne book, and I hate Wayne. I know everybody like loves this guy, but his humor just does not work for me. And I hated the 𝐒𝐮𝐲 tie-ins. I get that the 𝐒𝐮𝐲 is getting more tied in, but it just, you know, it went like a little bit in each of the books, and then boom on this one, it became like everything about the book, like investiture that, 𝐒𝐮𝐲 that. It was brought up so many times. Number 108 is Fugitive Telemetry. This is the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. This is book number 6. Oh man, I hated this book. And I don't know that this book is worse than the others. My problem with this book is it's the same as the others. And I read all of the Murderbot books like very back to back. I read them after they all came out. And it's the same book, with a little few differences, and it's a cool world, it's a cool concept. I like Murderbot a little bit. I just feel like it should have gone in so many different directions that it never took it. Man, that's so fast. Okay, so number 107 is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I've never read a Neil Gaiman book before this one. I had to duck out of this one right near the end of it. I never really got sucked into this story at all. I thought that the beginning was kind of solid, and then it just got into this weird direction that I never really appreciated. I wish I did. Maybe the TV show's a lot better. I think there's a TV show, and I feel bad because everybody seems to like this book with me. But you know, it is what it is, and that almost got that one. Almost nailed it. Okay, so number 106 is The Goblin Emperor by Katherine Addison. This is a 1.5, and oh man, I should have rated this a 1, but I finished it. And when I finish a book, I always give it above a 1. And the way that it was written is so bad to me. Nothing interesting happens. It's like a day in a life of an emperor, this Goblin Emperor. And it's like, it's not even Goblin. It's just like, there's nothing Goblin about this other than it's named Goblin. There's nothing fantasy here. It's just really boring court life that never gets interesting at any point. I hate the way that... I'm so mad at this timer. Okay, number 105 is Dragon Haven. This is Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. This is, I gotta go faster than this. Okay, this is the series with the dragons, and it's I think the 4th of the 5 series, and it's the 2nd book, and I hate it. Nothing happened. It was like characters going from point A to point B, and it bored me to tears. It's a YA story. You'll hear this a lot. I just don't like YA stories. They don't work for me. I like adult fantasy. This was not that. I hated like the little teenage romances that got on here, and I wanted more dragon stuff. Okay, number 104 is Nolyn. This is part of Rhaenyra by Michael J. Sullivan. I gave this a 2 out of 5. And I'm so burnt out with Rhaenyra. I feel like all of the Rhaenyra series, and there's like a lot of Rhaenyra books, are getting downhill in quality. Not necessarily every single book in a linear form, but each series most certainly. I did not like Legends of the First Empire, and then I got into the Nolyn, and I just hated it. I want Michael J. Sullivan to go do something new, because he's a good writer. But Rhaenyra, dude, just finally, just do something else. Did I do it? Yeah, I did it finally. Okay, so number 103 is The Return of Abaddon. This is The Scars of Hiraeth by Peter Morin. This is the second and last book that I ever read by an indie author that sent me a book for free. I hate to say bad things about this because it's the guy's first book, but it just really he needs more practice. It was not well put together. Just a huge info dump in the beginning of this. I don't really like modern day fantasy stories, which is what this one is. He might be a good writer eventually. This first book was not it. Okay, so next is Blood Follows. This is the first chronologically of the Tales of Botulism and Corbel Brooch by Stephen Erikson. Oops, excuse me. And that's going to waste time. And I didn't like it. I ended up getting so soured on Botulism and Corbel Brooch, and I was like, is this series going to be for me? And I ended up loving it. The second book is way high up on this list. But the first one is just boring. It's just all set up. Nothing interesting happens. Nothing funny happens. These books are supposed to be really funny. And blah. It's very short. Felt like it ended really quick. Just like that timer that I hate. Okay, number 101 is We Free Men. This is part of Discworld by Terry Pratchett. Gave this a 2 out of 5. And again, this is a YA story. Maybe not even YA. It's like younger than that. It's for kids. It's a kid's book. And I don't like that kind of stuff. I should be able to appreciate it more. I saved it. I want to read it to my kids when they get a little bit older because it does have some interesting humor in it. Doesn't work for me, but it probably did when I was a kid. The kid stories, I cannot appreciate that sort of writing, and it is what it is. Okay, next is 100. I'm going to go fast on this one because this is The Amazing Maurice. This is also Discworld by Terry Pratchett, 2 out of 5. Same deal, kids book, and I'm cutting it right there. Okay, so let's move on to number 99. This is King of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. This is part of the Broken Empire. I give it a 2 out of 5. The first book, Prince of Thorns, I thought was okay. I did not like this one. And one of the major reasons, there's a lot, I don't have enough time to tell you about it. I'm wasting time, I shouldn't do that. But it's all from this one character's perspective, but it jumps around between different timelines in this character's life, and it's super confusing, needlessly confusing. It doesn't help the plot at all. If this was chronologically based, I think I would have liked it a lot more. But again, I don't like the protagonist here. And if I don't like the protagonist, you know what I was going to say. Okay, number 98 is The Blood Mirror. This is part of Lightbringer by Brent Weeks. I don't remember which one this is. It's the second to last. I think that's 4. The story started to go downhill here. And I worried because I thought the last book would be atrocious. I kind of liked the last book, but there's a twist here which ruins the series for me. I shouldn't say that because I still like the series, but I just kind of think about it as that twist didn't happen. If you read these books, you know what I'm talking about. It's the worst twist of all time. Let us move now to number 97. This is The Hod King, Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft, and number 2. This is the third, number 2, it's rated 2 out of 5. It's the third book in the series. I just started to like them less and less. I give the first book, I think, a 4, then I don't know what I give the second one, but the third one, I was out of it. I don't like the path that it went. I think my expectations were something different. I thought it was going to be a story about this tower, and that was going to be the central feature. It ended up being a story about a bunch of characters that I didn't really care for, and yeah, I started to fall out of love with the setting here. Oh, God. Number 96, this is Arm of the Sphinx. This is Books of Babel. Clearly, I was wrong that the second book with the 3 out of 5 because this is in the 2 out of 5 category. And yeah, I continue my thought. The first book was about this ascending of a tower. The second book I thought would continue that. We get these really fun short stories. It was not that. It started to become a more cohesive storyline, and I didn't like the storyline. I wanted more of this fun tower. I wanted to investigate these different floors, and we just kind of spent a long time in huge hops between floors. Not enough time to investigate the thing I liked. Number 95 is Iron Gold. This is from Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown. This is the first book in the second group of books. I don't think the second's a trilogy like the first. I think there's going to be more books. But I loved the ending to the first series so much that I ultimately felt when I read this that it didn't need to go on. Now I keep hearing from people that I need to keep going. I think the next one's Iron Gold, and everybody tells me that one might be the best of the Red Rising books. So maybe I will eventually, but this one soured me so much. It was like, I wish stories would end when their time is done. And I felt like the time was done. Number 94 is Blood and Bone by Malazan, 𝐒𝐮𝐸𝐴𝐵. This is a 2.5 out of 5. I love Malazan. I love 𝐒𝐮𝐸𝐴𝐵. Man, I didn't love this book. It didn't feel Malazan to me. It just was dull. It was very dark. Now, Malazan is dark, but I don't think Malazan's grimdark. I don't think any of the authors would call it that. But this was just bleak, and none of the storylines really captivated me, and it's sad because 𝐒𝐮𝐸𝐴𝐵 has done great books both before and after this, but not this one. Ah, man, I nailed it. I'm so happy with myself. All right, number 93 is The Dragon Republic. This is part of the Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is the second book in the series, and this is where it all started to go downhill for me. I just hate the character. I hate the main character so much. I felt like the main character had some decent progression in the first book. I thought the first book ended magnificently in a way that really just kind of shocks the reader. It didn't shock me a little bit because I kind of knew the history here, but it was fun. And that sounds really bad if you know what I'm talking about, but I liked it. Now the second book, it just was, I hate the main character. Number 92, this is Blood of Empire by the Powder Mage, Brian McClellan. This is book 3. It's hard for me to read these books because if I read them individually, I might have liked them more. But I kept thinking about them as compared to the first Powder Mage trilogy. And I love the first Powder Mage trilogy a lot, more than I probably should have. And the second one just didn't do it for me. It was more like a detective story. Didn't grab me. I lost so many of the characters that I loved from the first one. And yeah, and I didn't love the way it ended. And I need a good ending. I'm getting better at this. I'm getting better at this. We are on fire here. I'm never going to miss another one. Number 91, Rogue Protocol. This is Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. This is book number 3. I gave it a 3 out of 5. And this is where it all starts going downhill for me because this is when I realized that these books aren't doing anything new. It's just a repetitive thing. Every book is the same. They have this, like Martha Wells is like, oh, I hit gold here, which I think she did. These books are immensely popular. And they cost a fortune for how big they are. So she's busting these things out, making tons of money, and she doesn't have to do anything. It's the easiest book ever to write because you have your whole plot outline. You know, it feels like a Mad Libs. I will give a win on that one too. Okay, number 90, The Shadow of What Was Lost. And this is _𝐒𝐮𝐤𝐬𝐿 trilogy by James Islington. I just finished this one recently. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I liked the premise of this, but I didn't like the execution. It was this it felt like the first Wheel of Time book where it was like a journey. I like journey stories. I like so many different kinds of stories, but journey stories are fun. But, oh man, weird concepts started going here, like traveling and time things. I didn't love the magic going on here very much. I was intrigued more than I liked the execution here. Everything to me felt okay. Everything, every single part of this book, I'm messing up again. All right, I thought I was in it. I thought I had it, but I don't. Okay, number 89, Unseen Academicals, another recent one. This is Discworld by Terry Pratchett, a 3 out of 5. This is a parody of soccer, and I like soccer a lot. I watch a lot of soccer, too much. But it wasn't very funny, and I need Discworld to be very funny. It was also a parody on fashion and the runway, and that's not something I'm into. I don't have to be into things to like the parody of it, but none of these really worked for me. Okay, number 88, Red Sister. This is Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence, another 3 out of 5. Another one where another one. I think this is the first time I'm going to say this, but I liked the beginning a lot. It grabbed me right out of the gate. The ending I thought was pretty good, but the large portion of the middle, not a third of the book, but a lot more than a third, is this middle portion. And it's just like one long training montage that should have been 50 pages, but ended up being hundreds of pages, and it really, really soured me on this entire book. I'm so good. I'm never going to miss another one. Okay, number 87, Good Omens. This is a hybrid book between Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. Gave it a 3 out of 5. I love Terry Pratchett, and I love so much about what he's done, and I thought I'm probably going to love this one too. Everyone talks about this series. Everyone talks about this book and being so good, and it was very boring. I don't love modern day fantasy stories. This is a modern day fantasy story. The humor didn't work for me, and I ultimately felt I don't know, is it a Neil Gaiman problem? So then I read American Gods, which I already talked about, didn't like it. So I don't think I like Neil Gaiman. That's how I be. Number 86 is Abaddon's Gate. This is The Expanse by James S.A. Corey, and this is where I gave up on the series. I might get into it again someday because I gave this a 3 out of 5, and that doesn't seem like a horrible score to jump out of a series. But to know that it's a 10-book series and I'm already kind of waning out on the story was not intriguing to me to continue on. Now, again, I probably will, but I'm not the biggest sci-fi guy. I do enjoy some sci-fi. I've loved some sci-fi, but in general, I'm a fantasy guy. Look at the name of my channel. So yeah, liked it, didn't love it. Kind of cheated there, but it's my channel. I do what I want. Number 85 is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is the last of the 3 out of 5s. And yeah, again, I like the idea of this book more than I liked the execution. I liked the beginning. I liked the end. I did not like the middle. The middle was this weird, like, it was not teenagers, but they act like teenagers. This romance plot. I don't love romance plots. I think they can be well done when they, you know, add to the story a little bit. I felt like it took it away and just added space to the story. Not really that good, Matt. Okay, number 84, Exit Strategy, Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. This is book number 4. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I'm going to quit this one early and just say it's kind of the same as the others. I liked it a little bit more, not a lot more. It is what it is. Okay, number 83 is Dread God. This is from the Cradle series by Will White. This is the latest book in the series. I don't know what number it's on, maybe like 10 or 11. And I'm sad because this is the lowest that I've ever rated a book from Cradle. I love Cradle. I still love Cradle. There's one more book to go, and I'm just so sad that I didn't like this book very much. It was okay, but my expectations were like a 5 out of 5 because the one before that, you'll see much later on, I loved it. And I'm so sad because I feel like the last book is going to flub the ending. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's awesome. I am very worried. Number 82 is The Broken Eye. This is Lightbringer by Brent Weeks. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. I think this is book 3 of the series, and it was just okay. I liked it. I didn't love it as much as the second one. The plot just kind of started to get away from each other from it. The twists I didn't think were nearly as good as the first 2 books. I thought the first 2 books had amazing aspects to them that really stood them apart. Maybe if I read this book on its own and had a gap between the second book, I would have liked it more, but it's hard for me to not compare. Number 81 is Age of Empire. This is from Rhaenyra, The Legends of the First Empire by Michael J. Sullivan, given a 3.5 out of 5. And every one of these books, I think, just kept going down on my list. I think this is the 3rd one in the series, and I quite like the second book. I really like the first book. It just got kind of samey. I felt like it was just writing books for the sake of writing them. The plot didn't go quick enough. And I started to get really out of it. And I should have loved it because I listened to the graphic audio of these books. In graphic audio, if you haven't done it, it's amazing. It's like a play in audio form. Like every single character have a different voice actor. Oh, I hate you. Number 80 is The Fiends of Nightmaria. This is Tales of Botchlane and Corbel Brooch by Stephen Erikson. I gave this a 4 out of 5. I like this book a lot. This is the last chronologically of the series. There might be another one, but it's like only written. It's not like actually in a book, and I can't really read cursive very well, so I didn't read that one yet. But yeah, this is good. It's just about a Botchlane and Corbel Brooch end up like running a kingdom, and there's so many hilarious aspects to what happens with these 2 characters when that happens, and I liked it a lot. Okay, number 79 is Network Effect. This is Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. Gave it a 4 out of 5. This is the first full-length Murderbot book, and it worked. It finally did something new, and I liked the freshness of it. Now, maybe Martha Wells, I know she's going to write more full-length novels here, because Murderbot books are like 150 pages. This was like in the 400 to 500 range. Most people say they don't like this one, that they didn't like the length. I like it. I like long books. I like chunky books. I like different, and this is different. So maybe when she writes another one, it'll be the same thing. She'll do that whole formula thing. I'm hoping not. Okay, number 78, another Murderbot Diaries. This is the first book in the series, All Systems Red. This is book 1. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I think it's my favorite of the Murderbot Diaries books, and it was fun. It was new. And if I read it again, I'd probably hate it because it's like the same Murderbot book. But when I read it for the first time, it was fresh. Murderbot's really fun. He's this kind of funny robot that, you know, has a lot of humanity to him. And he's very interesting main character and protagonist, and I like good protagonists. Beep. Okay. Number 77 is Making Money. This is from Discworld, Terry Pratchett. 4 out of 5. I like this. This is a parody on the banking system that I thought was very ingenious. I couldn't give it a 5 out of 5 because it didn't make me laugh as much as a lot of other Discworld books. And some parts were just okay, but I thought the plot was very good. A lot of times the plot in Discworld books kind of aren't great. It's the funny and witty aspects of the books that make them truly great. The plot here was great. I like the Moist von Lipwig side books. I think there's like 3 of them. That was fast. Okay, Number 76 is A Fracture in the Quiz Deep. This is from 𝐒𝐨𝐬𝐻 by Travis Riddle. I gave it a 4 out of 5. This is the second in the 𝐒𝐿𝐻 series. This is a Pokemon-inspired fantasy book. It's just like such a light read. It's fun. It's short. And I kind of like Pokemon. I haven't played it in forever. Actually, that's not true. I got my kids a Switch. I really play it. And they don't really know what they're doing. And I got the new Pokemon game, so it's fun. And I read this book, and it's also fun. And I like fun books. And I can't believe more people haven't written kind of Pokemon-style books before. Next is In the Shadow of Lightning. This is Glass Immortals by Brian McClellan. He's the author of The Powder Mage. Gave it a 4 out of 5. And I like this one a lot. And a lot of people don't like this one because they feel like it's not nearly as good as The Powder Mage. I feel like I'm one of the higher scores for it out of kind of like the booktube community that has reviewed this. But I thought it was very interesting. I'm very intrigued on going forward. I don't have enough time to tell you anything that it's about, but it kind of grabs you out of the gate, doesn't really let go. It's just kind of fun. Number 74 is Mother of Learning Arc 1. This is by 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐿 𝐒𝐻𝐳, and it's 4 out of 5. And this is the first in Mother of Learning. There's 3 arcs here, but think of them as like 3 big books. And I liked it a lot. It was very fun. It's like this time loop story, and these stories keep getting better and better as they go along, but it kind of hooks you pretty quick. And it's just like, it's probably my favorite take on a time loop where a character gets stuck in the same space of time over and over, and they have to kind of perfect it. I love progression. Oh, that's fast. Number 73, Thud. This is Discworld by Terry Pratchett, 4 out of 5. This is probably like my least favorite of the Night Watch sub-series of Discworld. It was good. It was funny. I really got a lot of laughs out of this. I thought the plot was very weak, like really weak. It was trying to be like smarter than it should have been, and a lot of it just fell flat for me. But very funny. Got a big kick out of it, and enough to give it a 4 out of 5, but couldn't give it higher. Number 72 is Legends and Lattes. This is by Travis Baldree, 4 out of 5. I shouldn't have liked this. I don't really love slice of life stories very much, and that's just all this is. It's like this cozy fantasy book that I just couldn't stop reading. It was very fun, just about this female orc that opens up a coffee shop and her trials and tribulations at trying to make a successful coffee shop. And that's it. That's the plot of the story. It's fun though, and I liked it, and I'll never read it again, but I will recommend it to people if they're looking for a good like refresher between epic fantasy stories. Number 71 is Dancer's Lament. This is Malazan by Ian C. Esselmont. This is book 1 of his newest series, and it's good. It's a good primer. It sets up. It never really hits like the peaks that Malazan does, or even the peaks of Ian C. Esselmont, but it sets things up really nicely, and you can tell where this story is going. It just takes a long time to really get interesting, but once it does, it's fantastic, and it gets you hooked on wanting to read more and more of the books in this series. Number 70 is Dragon Keeper. This is Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. This is book 1 in the miniseries that everyone doesn't like. And I like this first one. It set things up nicely. It was slow. It was probably like my least favorite Realm of the Elderlings books up to that point, but I was interested. I liked the new characters. I was very invested in the bad guy in this story. I liked everything about the new characters and where this was going. I liked this part of the world. A lot of good setup. I love dragons. There's a lot of dragon stuff here, and I was very intrigued to see where this journey went. Number 69 is Night Watch. This is Discworld by Terry Pratchett, 4 out of 5. This is another of the Night Watch series, and it's good. I felt like the plot was weird though. It was funny. It was a go back in time kind of story, and I don't normally love those. They feel like fan service to me a lot of the time, but this is probably one of the better go back in time stories that I've ever read. It was well executed. I liked the new characters. I almost always love the new characters that are put in for like a one-off in Discworld. There's no way that's 30 seconds. There's just no way. Number 68 is A Sail. This is Malazan by Ian C. Esselmont. This is his first series that he did. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's really good. It doesn't, again, it's not the Steven Erikson height of Malazan, but it's really good. I liked the continent of 𝐒𝐮𝐲 here. It felt well fleshed out with, it feels like a real world, and I like that so much. It had the basic plot structure that I like from 𝐒𝐮𝐲, a lot of different plot lines that all converged together at the end. They all felt kind of equally compelling, and I like this book a lot. Number 67 is 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐿IVR, my most recent finished book, I believe. This is from the Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell, and I gave this a 4 out of 5. It's a really good book. It is probably the weakest of the three, but that's not a bad thing because this is a wonderful series. I don't know, it felt like the second one ended so hot that it's hard for me to give this book a high score when it's just clearly not. How could it be as good as the second one? Because the second one is, one of the better books that I've ever read. But I love this retelling of... Number 66 is Streets of Loretto. This is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. This is a follow-up book to the main Lonesome Dove book, which you'll hear almost at the end, or maybe the very end of this video, you'll see. And it's good. I like the story. I like Western books. This is one of the better Western books that I've ever read. I read a lot a while back, but I'm kind of starting to get back into them. And it's really good. It's nothing as good as the first one. How could it be? Again, how could it be as good as Lonesome Dove? But it's a well-intentioned effort that I liked. Number 65 is The Winter King. This is, again, from the Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. I can talk about this again and finish my previous thought. This is a retelling of the legend of King Arthur from a very interesting perspective from this character, Durfal, who is very integral to the plot here, but not a character that we would really know a lot about. It's not like a Lancelot or Galahad or somebody like that, but it's really fun, sets things up really nicely, ends hot. I really liked it. Okay. So, number 64 is Gates of Fire. This is by Stephen Pressfield, and it is a historical fiction of the Battle of Thermopylae. And I think the Battle of Thermopylae is just so intriguing to me. I have Greek heritage. And if the Battle of Thermopylae is like the 300 movie, but in book form, it's very, very good. I kind of wish it was longer. That's my big criticism. I kind of feel like, the Battle of Thermopylae is important, but the follow-up events were just as important as I wanted to hear about those two. Number 63 is The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is by T.J. Klune, 4 out of 5. And again, another one that I kind of thought that I would not like. It doesn't feel like it's for me. It's this kind of like cheery, happy fantasy story. Nothing epic, nothing bad happens. It's just about this inspector of orphanages, of magic kids. And that's the plot. That's what happens. And it's a feel-good story. I don't normally love those. I like tragedy in my stories. But it's fun, and it's a good read if... Okay. Number 62 is Half a King. This is Shattered Sea by Joe Abercrombie, 4 out of 5. This is the first in the Shattered Sea series. Again, I talked about this earlier, but I thought this was going to be a Joe Abercrombie story where everybody dies, tragedy happens, grimdark. It's not. It's a YA story. I didn't realize that going, and I should have. I probably wouldn't have read it, but the ending was really good. The ending was classic Joe Abercrombie twist in your face. It just leading up to that point, I didn't love it. But the ending's so good that I have to give it a 4 out of 5. Okay, number 61 is The Burning White. This is Lightbringer by Brent Weeks. This is the last book in the series, and I feel like I'm the only person that liked this book. I didn't love it. It had a weird kind of Christian faith thing that just kind of randomly comes in. It'd be better if it kind of got slowly revealed that that's where we're going here, but it just kind of randomly feels like the author found God or something all of a sudden and wanted to write about it. And that's weird. I wish the series ended better, but it's good. It's a solid take, and I liked it. Number 60 is The Poppy War. This is the first in the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang. This is a 4 out of 5. I liked it. It started off kind of weak. It got better as it went along, and I thought it ended really well. I liked the character development here. I didn't love the protagonist until the book kind of went along, but I love the way this plot ended, and as you can tell, I love good endings. I'm doing all these in under 30 seconds. I'm finally getting better at this. Number 59 is Prince of Thorns. This is part of The Broken Empire by Mark Lawrence. Book 1, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Another one where I didn't love the book until the end. Talking too much, I'm coughing. I hate the protagonist, but even with that, I kind of like the plot here. It was a little confusing needlessly, but the ending was really good and fun and classic fantasy, and it really worked for me. Number 58 is The Black Prism. This is Lightbringer by Brent Weeks. Another 4 out of 5. This is book 1. This thing sets up really well. It's not nearly as good as a lot of other fantasy books, but it's a really good fantasy book that I think everybody should read. The magic system is really fun, very unique. I thought that like Warbringer by Brandon Sanderson would be the best magic system with a color system associated with it. Nah, this one is. This one's way better. Sorry for the cough. I'm talking way too much and too fast. Okay, let's move on. Number 57 is Senlin Ascends. This is from the Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. This is towards the end of my 4 out of 5s. I like this one. This kind of felt like it had this really fun journey, slowly ascending up this tower. It's almost like a book in parts, where each part of the book is a different floor of this tower. Every floor is very different. I love the different aspects to this book. It's very fun, very fresh. The characters are not the greatest, but I'm intrigued by them and where the story was going. I don't know flubbing it, but I liked it. Number 56 is Caliban's War. This is the second book in the Expanse series by Jem S.A. Corey, and yeah, it's good. Not great. Sets up the world really nicely, really building out this world, and I liked it. It just felt like the plot's not really going anywhere. It's more like, it almost feels like when I finish The Expanse, which I eventually will, maybe, I feel like I'm going to end up saying like, yeah, this book could have been like a trilogy and been a lot tighter. Number 55 is Wrath of Empire. This is from the Powder Mage. Book 2 of that new series, Gods of Blood and Powder, I think it's called. I think I got that right. Yeah, it's good. I don't know really what else to say. Kind of forgettable. I would probably rate it lower if I was going to rate it today, but I'm sticking to my original rating. But it's just not nearly as good as the first Powder Mage series, but it's intriguing. I like the characters a lot, though. I'm sad that a lot of the characters are not the same. I wanted the old characters to come back, but the new ones are very intriguing and very compelling. Number 54 is The Healthy Dead. This is the Tales of Botchland and Coral Brooch. This is a 4.5 out of 5. This book is straight up hysterical. I love it so much. I can't really go into much depth in 30 seconds, but it's so funny, and it's about these two evil necromancers that show up to this place that wants to be really healthy in a really negative way, and you have to read it. It's absolutely drop dead funny. Drop dead funny. Healthy Dead. I made it funny. Okay, Son of a Lich is number 53. This is the second book in the Dark Prophet series by J. Zachary Pike. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. It is not as good as the first book, Orgonomics, but it is very good. I felt like this book would have been so much better if it was divided up into 2 different books. I say that because it's got this weird like conclusion to the middle of the book, and then it goes in this weird different direction. And if it would have been fleshed out more, it would have been so much better for me. Very funny book though. I laughed a ton. Number 52 is A Time of Dread. This is Of Blood and Bone by John Gwynne. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. This is book 1 of his second series. There are 7 books over these 2 series, which are the same world, and my least high rating here was a 4.5 out of 5, this one. Because it started really slow, I didn't love the narrow world here. It takes place in the same world, but in like, if the world's this big, it takes place here. And I didn't love the narrow aspect of it. It took a while to get going. Once it did at the end, it rocked. Number 51 is On Lavender Tides. This is the first book in the 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 series by Travis Riddle. This is the first in that series I was talking about that's Pokemon-inspired fantasy. I loved building this world together, and it was very fun. I love this Pokemon aspect, and I can't wait to read more of these books. Number 50 is Wintersteel. This is Cradle by Will Wright. It's 4.5 out of 5. This is like the tail end of an awesome Magic tournament between people that are going all out. It's so fun to read about these one-off, one-on-one fights between these different characters. I love so much about this book. Didn't reach the heights of some of the other ones because of the narrow scope of it, but it's very fun nonetheless. Number 49 is Going Postal. This is part of Discworld by Terry Pratchett. It's a 4.5 out of 5. This is another in the Moist von Lipwig series. The other one I talked about earlier was Making Money. This Going Postal one is a parody on the postal system. Didn't really find a lot of humor here. It was a little funny, but the plot is probably, I will say, it's the best plot of any of the Discworld books that I've read up to this point. I only have like 1 or 2 more to go, so I'm going to say it's the best Discworld plot out of any of the bunch. Number 48 is Artificial Condition by the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. I messed up something here because I already said earlier on in this video that the first book in the series was a different book. I messed up. This is the first book in the series, and it is my favorite of the series. For the same reasons that I said a while back. I don't know. I read 117 books. I get mixed up sometimes. Number 47 is Ghostwater. This is also Cradle by Will White. This is a 4.5 out of 5. This is a book without ruining anything about this, but the character, it's such a narrow scope here, and it's like such a diversion from everything else. But the main character here goes to a pocket world that's very small and has to achieve a mission. The ending is so good. It hypes you up. You're cheering for the main character. It gives you chills. I like so much about this book. It's really, really good. Number 46 is The Last Hero. This is Discworld by Terry Pratchett. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And I feel like a lot of people don't like this one because it's really short and the plot isn't amazing. But I got the one with pictures by these beautiful drawings. I did find the plot good enough, but the pictures are so beautiful and well done that it makes the plot and takes it in such a different way. And I love finally being able to visualize the Discworld series, the way the author really intended it. So, great book. Number 45 is Morningstar. This is part of the Red Rising saga by Pierce Brown. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. This is the last book in the Red Rising trilogy. The book's okay. The ending is one of the better endings that I've ever read. It's that good. It's so shocking and perfect, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Number 44 is City of Dragons. This is Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. This is book 3 of 4 of this series. And I like this book so much because the bore of the second book is finally done. We actually get to where the plot is finally going. It was intriguing. I like so much about this book. I think a lot of people don't like this book, mostly because they got so soured on the earlier ones. I don't think a lot of people read it. I did. I liked it a lot. Number 43 is Golden Fool. This is again Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. This is book 2 in the the fourth series, the one after the one I just talked about, and it's really fun. The first book in the series I liked a lot, but the second one goes in like this entirely different direction. You're like, oh, this is what the plot's about. The ending is kind of weak though because it's just setting up the third book. But I just love the way Robin Hobb writes, and I could read anything that she puts out. Number 42 is The Blinding Knife. This is Lightbringer by Brent Weeks. We are finally to the 5 out of 5s. This is book 2. This is the best that Lightbringer has to offer. It is so good. And part of the reason I like this, other than I really liked everything here. I like the characters, I like the plot, but the twists are peak fantasy. I love them so much, and they make the book so much better. Number 41 is Dead House Landing. This is Malazan by Ian C. Esselmont. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I'm going to stop saying 5 out of 5 at this point because these are all 5 out of 5s going forward. And this is book 2, yeah. And this is where the plot finally starts taking hold. About Kellenvet and Dancer, these two two central characters in Malazan Book of the Fallen. You're finally seeing the backstory here. You're seeing a backstory to so many characters. I oftentimes don't like backstory stories because they feel like fan service, but this wasn't. This was its own thing. Missed it. Number 40 is Underlord. This is, again, Cradle by Will White. This book's awesome. And, you know, so many of the Cradle books kind of merge into the same thing for me because I kind of think of them as like one continuous thing because there's so many of these books. But what I remember most about these is these two major clans that finally are coming together and tensions have popped and they're finally fighting. And the main characters are finally super strong and very intriguing to watch them finally go off. Number 39 is Blood of Dragons. This is the last in the realm of the Elderlings from the Rainwild Chronicles series. I keep talking about that series here. And it's great. The whole book is great. I love that it's finally blending between the other series and you're finally understanding kind of why they fit into the piece here. The ending is just, it rocks. Everything kind of comes together. The dragons are super powerful. Super fun to read about, and it's just really good. Number 38. This is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff, the first Jay Kristoff book I've ever read, and this was a fan pick for me on this channel. I did a raffle, and this one won, and I hate vampire stories, but not anymore, because this one's awesome. It's just great. I love the writing style. I love the framing narrative here. So much about this book is so good, and I would recommend it to literally everybody. All right, my voice is like going out. I'm gonna show up to work tomorrow and people are gonna be like, whoa, were you yelling or something? Like, no, I recorded a YouTube video, but the show must go on. Let's continue and see how well I can do this. Oh man, it's really going out. Okay, number 37 is Mother of Learning Arc 2. This is obviously the second book in the series by 𝐒𝐨𝐬𝐬𝐬 𝐿. And this is where the story really starts taking off. This is that time loop story I was talking about earlier, and it's just so fun. The writing quality is not incredible, but the plot is so well done that it excuses all of the other faults that might be here with characters, characters and the writing style, but the plot is just so good, so fun. I urge everybody to read this. Number 36 is Uncrowned. This is by Cradle by Will White. This is the heart of that tournament I was talking about earlier. This is where most of the fights happen. I love these one-on-one battles between using these crazy powers that you don't know about, and it's just such an intriguing thing to me. I know a lot of people don't love this one. It's one of my favorite Cradle books. Number 35 is Fool's Quest. This is Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. This is book number 2 in, man, I'm messing up these titles now. I think this is the second book in the Fitz and the Fool series. I could be wrong about that, but I think I'm right. Am I right? Maybe. Let's just go with it. And it's awesome. I loved it so much, and everyone needs to beat Realm of the Elderlings. I'll keep it very vague like that. These titles really run into each other. Number 34 is Monstrous Regiment by, this is Discworld by Terry Pratchett. It's an easy 5 out of 5. It's one of my favorite Discworld books. And I can't really say anything about it though, because the heart of this story is a twist that happens within the first 75 pages that turns into a whole new book and a play on that thing that I wish I could say, but I can't. But read this book, it's awesome. Number 33 is Bloodline. This is Cradle again by Will White, and another one where I can't really say anything because the entire book is a giant spoiler. I mean, the central premise of this book would ruin so much about what happens if you're reading this series already that I can't say anything other than I really, really like it. Number 32 is Bloody Rose. This is in the Banned series by Nicholas Eames. This is the second book in the series. There's only 2 out. It's lovely. It's a play on 80s rock and roll, but in a fantasy setting. It's not 80s rock and roll, but it has all these vibes in it and all these pop culture references to that. It's about these older heroes that are going on a quest. No, it's not. The first one is. The second one is about the next generation, and it's so fun. The monsters are awesome and huge. The battles are... Okay, don't get mad. Book number 31 is The Umbral Storm. This is part of the Sharded Few by Alec Hudson. This is an epic fantasy, progression fantasy. I love both of those things. This book is awesome. If you read it for any other reason, the reason you should is because The magic system is a wonderful, it's one of my favorite magic systems that I've ever read about. It's so inventive. I love everything about this book, and I wish more people would give it a chance. Number 30 is 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐻 Reach. This is Malazan by Ian C. Esmont. This is book number 3 in his newest series, and it's the best of the bunch. It's so good. I wish, I thought I hated these going back in time and telling them the background stories, but I love it. It's awesome. You have to give it a chance. I can't say more because I've already talked about the series a bunch. Number 29 is Orconomics. This is part of the Dark Prophet series by J. Zachary Pike. It's the first in the series. This book won the indie award thing that Mark Lawrence does a few years back, and it is so funny. It's one of the funniest books I've ever read. It is a play on modern day fiscal systems and how much of a mess they can be. It's a wonderful play on like a Dungeons and Dragons world that is just so dang funny. Number 28 is Malice. This is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. This is an easy 5 out of 5 for me. It's the first book that John Gwynne ever wrote, and it's crazy to me how a book can be this good by a brand new author. And it's just such a good epic fantasy story. It's one of my favorite epic fantasy stories of all time. This is the worst of the 4 books, and it's one of my favorite books that I've ever read. It's wonderful. Everyone needs to read this if they haven't done yet. Haven't done yet? What's that even mean? Whatever. My brain's not working right. Number 27, A Time of Blood. This is Of Blood and Bone by John Gwynne. You're going to see a lot of John Gwynne here coming up. This is book number 2 in Of Blood and Bone. The first book I said was 4.5 out of 5. This is peak John Gwynne. The battles rock. The revelations are amazing. I love the more serious dynamic of this one, where it's a little bit of a darker world. The blending between, are people really good, or are they really bad? Is there a good and bad? A classic fantasy thing that just works to perfection in this book. Number 26 is Fool's Fate. This is Realm of the Elderlings. This is book number 3 of Tawny Man. This is the best that the Tawny Man trilogy has to offer. I love good endings, and this one is awesome. It was confusing to me where the story was going until like the second half of the second book, but I was so excited to see this adventure that they're going on involving, I can't say, I don't want to ruin it, but it's rocks, and I love the epic scale of this one. Number 25 is Jade City. This is part of the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. Man, the Greenbone Saga is good. I knew that it was going to be good because it's a Godfather fantasy story. Yeah, sign me up. I love the Godfather movies. I love the Godfather book. And having a fantasy element here, it does its own thing and it rocks. Fonda Lee is incredible, and I can't wait to read everything that she has to offer in the future. Number 24 is Fool's Assassin. This is Realm of the Elderlings. And it is book number 1 of Fitz and the Fool. Oh man, this is good. And I don't feel like I should have liked it because the entire book takes place in like a house or the surroundings of a house. I like big epic fantasy stories, but she is such a good writer, and she brings in this new character that you get some point of view chapters for, and I adore this character. I love how much Fitz has grown by this point in the story. He's an older man going through a lot of I wanted to talk more. That is frustrating. Number 23 is A Time of Courage. This is Of Blood and Bone. This is the final book in the series. And what makes this book so special is the final battle. The final battle takes place over like half this book. Maybe not that much, but it's so good. I think it's the best battle in any John Gwynne book. And that says something, because I think he's like the best battle writer that exists right now. Even better than Joe Abercrombie. Yeah. People need to read Of Blood and Bone. A lot of people read the first series, Faithful and the Fallen, but they never read this one. You're doing yourself a major disservice. Go read this trilogy if you haven't done so. The John Gwynne hype train continues. This is Valor, part of the Faithful and the Fallen. This is book 2. I don't really want to say much more, but this is just continuing the amazing epic fantasy story. All of these kind of blend into one. I couldn't differentiate them between you after like the first and the fourth, but they all kind of blend together, and they're all equally awesome. It is like the height of epic fantasy. Number 21 is The Bone Ships. This is part of The Tide Child by R.J. Barker. Yeah, this is so good. This blew me out of the water. It's a naval book, and I didn't mean to say that, but yeah, points for the pun for me. But it's so good. I love everything about this pirate story. These huge epic sea beasts. It's written beautifully. The prose is perfect. R.J. Barker is a genius, and I want to read all of the R.J. Barker. Then we have The Leaves of Laughter's End. This is Tales of Botchland and Coral Brooch by Stephen Erikson. This is another naval book. I love naval fantasy books. And this, again, is one of the funniest books I've ever read. And it comes off the tails of that first book, which I didn't like very much. And I was like crying, laughing at so many points of the story. My wife looked at me multiple times and like, what's wrong with you? I was like, honestly, like tears coming out. It's so good and dark. It's like murders are happening, blood and gore and comedy. Okay, Ruin. This is Faithful and the Fallen. This is book 3 by John Gwynne. I don't want to say anything more. I've kind of said everything I have to say about the series. Epic fantasy at its best. Enemy of God is number 18. This is part of the Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. Oh gosh, this book is so good. I've talked about books 1 and 3. This is a retelling of the legends of King Arthur. There's so much tragedy that happens in this. I love good tragic stories and redemption and a hero's story. It's so beautiful. If you've never read historical fiction before and you're a fantasy fan, this is the trilogy to read. Number 17 is Reaper. This is part of Cradle by Will White. I think this is the best Cradle book that's ever come out, and it's the second to most recent one. It's really good. Everything about it's really good. But there's a moment, this twist that happens, and it's one of the greatest twists that I've ever read, and I should have seen it coming. I didn't. That's my favorite kind of twist, the ones where you could have pieced it together. And you really should have in this case. I don't know what I missed. I don't know how I didn't, but when it hit me, I honestly had to put the book down for a little while to just soak in what just occurred. Number 16 is The Hunger of the Gods. This is the second book in the Bloodsworn Saga series by John Gwynne. Man, I love John Gwynne. And yeah, this is like a Norse epic fantasy story of like gods that are returning, these huge, enormous sized gods and these like killer Vikings that you get these different multi-point of view story. It's dark, it's grim, it's bloody, the battles are great, the characters are great. Does end on a cliffhanger, I don't love that, but I can't wait to read the next one. Number 15 is The Worms of Blearmouth. I was wrong. This is the best Botchland and Cornwell Brooch book. It's so good. The plot's amazing. It is maybe, I think it is the funniest book that I've ever read. The characters are perfect. Of so many of these side characters, it's not a very long book, but they're so well fleshed out and hilarious. You can't read this book without reading a few of the other ones or without reading other Malazan books, but if you have, read it. Number 14 is Fae and Fair. This is part of The Wandering Inn by Pirate Abba, a series that's becoming one of my all-time favorites. This is a progression fantasy, like a Dungeons & Dragons world where some people get teleported to this other world where you can literally rank up and become different classes, but they don't think like that. They think like we do, and it's so it's huge. It's the longest fantasy story of all time. I am like this far through this much, but it rocks. All right. Number 13 is Jade War. This is Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. This is that mafia-style fantasy book that I was talking about earlier. This is where the story really starts to take fold. You're in love with the characters by now. You don't know who's going to live, who's going to die. You don't know where it's going to go. There's so many shocking moments that happen. I love being shocked. I love well-developed characters. I love a great plot. This has every single thing you would ever want out of a wonderful fantasy story. Next is number 12. This is The Wandering Inn, the first Wandering Inn book by Pirate Abba. And I think I messed something up here because this should have been flipped with Fae and Fair. I like that one more. But this introduces you to the story. It takes a little while to really like suck it in because you have to get so used to this new different thing, but it's wonderful. Once you get hooked, it's dangerous because of how long this series is. Okay, number 11. This is Mother of Learning Arc 3. I just finished this book up. This is by 𝐒𝐮𝐥 𝐋𝐢𝐳𝐤𝐬. This is finally, the time loop is coming to a close. You get all the mysteries are finally revealed. It's perfectly done. A perfectly done plot. It's one of the better plots that I've ever read in fantasy because there's a lot of faults here too with the characters and the way it's written, but it's like one of the most fun things I've ever read, and I love fun. This has all of the fun. You gotta read the series. Top 10. Here we are. Number 10 is Jade Legacy. This is the final book in the Greenbone saga. You finally see where this story has been taking us forever. And it does such a beautiful job at jumping along and showing like generational growth of these characters. And I know a lot of times you do time jumps in books and it's flubbed. Not here. It's done to perfection. I thought I was going to be able to say perfection and it was going to beep and it would be like I perfected that also, but I didn't. But I messed up. Number 9, Flowers of 𝐒𝐮𝐳𝐤𝐬. This is the third book in The Wandering Inn. This is the most recent one that I've read. I love it so much. The characters are getting way more developed. The book is sprawling into different continents, which I love. My voice is almost gone. And thank gosh, we're almost done. Read The Wandering Inn. Even though it's a web serial, it's some of the best that fantasy has to offer. Number 8, Call of the Bone Ships. This is the second in the Tidechild trilogy by R.J. Barker. I love naval fantasy books. This is probably the best naval fantasy that I've ever read. It's so wonderfully done. The best thing about it is the writing. The prose is magical to me. Now, maybe it's not the best prose in the world because I'm not the best judge of that. But for me, it's like the best. It's so well done. I just soak all of this book in, every word of it. Number 7 is The Forgetting Moon. This is part of the 5 Warrior Angels by Brian Lee Durfee. Brian Lee Durfee is a fellow booktuber, and he wrote a trilogy of books, each one better than the one before it. This is the worst of the bunch, and it is rated at number 7. It is the grimmest of grimdark. It is the most epic of epic fantasy. It is an amazing, amazing book. And how did he bust this out with his first ever written book? I don't know. Number 6, Assassin's Fate. This is the last of the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. This is where the series finally wraps up. It's so beautifully done. Every aspect of this book is the best of the Realm of the Elderlings. It makes all of the other books make sense. Everything is tied together. It's so tidy and neat and perfect. The writing is perfect. The characters are perfect. The character growth. The final words of this book were tearjerkers. It's a perfect book. Number 5, The Blackest Heart. This is the 5 Warrior Angels by Brian Lee Durfee. This is the second of the trilogy. It somehow got better from the first book, and I don't know how. The set-piece battles here are really what set this apart. A couple of them in particular are just so epic in scale. You're so tied into these characters by this point, you don't know where the prophecies that are going. The religious prophecy thing here is wonderful. It's a trope that's very often used in fantasy, but it's done to perfection here, and I wish Brian Lee Durfee... I'll say it more because I have another book to say of his. Number 4 is Kings of the Wild. This is part of the Band series by Nicholas Eames. This is the one that's about a bunch of older characters that are bringing the group of warriors back together for one last hurrah of trying to rescue one of the main character's daughters. And it's kind of like they're finding themselves. They're trying to find their youth again. It's hilarious. It's fun. It rocks. I can't say enough positive things about Kings of the Wild. Number 3 is The Lonesome Crown. This is the 5 Warrior Angels, the last book in the series. It just came out recently by Brian Lee Durfee. The ending is amazing. It has everything that the other books had with an epic battle that I will never forget. And it's so well done. Brian Lee Durfee somehow grew as an author as he was writing these books. And I can't say enough positive things. Not enough people have read these books. You need to go get The Forgetting Moon now and then go pick up the next 2 books without even reading the first one if you like grimdark. Number 2 is Wrath. This is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. This is the final book in the original quartet of books. It's so good. I love the way everything gets wrapped up. The tension is just gone up to 11. I won't say the final battle is as good as the final one in A Blood of Bone, but it's up there. But I just love the way everything finally wraps up. I love The Faithful and the Fallen. It's one of my all-time favorite series, and this is the best of the bunch. And that brings us to number 1. Number 1 is not a fantasy book. It is The Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. This is a historical fiction cowboy book about these guys that are older that want to go have a cattle drive from Texas to Montana. That's the book. It's just wonderful. The characters are perfect. I love the setting. I love the plot. I love the writing. It's so great. It's a huge book. And I can't believe that my favorite book on my channel is not a fantasy. We're done. I'm so glad I'm done. I can't talk anymore. Thank you so much. If you've stuck here, you rock. I appreciate you. Thanks for going through this journey with me. And I am regretting doing this again a year from now because of what it has done to my throat. Thank you. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to my patrons, and a special shout out to my Ascendant tier patrons, Sky, Russell, and Ron Reich.